Dean. We're going to have a yarn to a couple of gun coaches tonight, so we're going to get a little bit of a insight into the mindset of a coach, and I guess how they build a season and how they grade themselves, how they pick leadership groups, whether they do all that sort of stuff, or is that just something that they talk about at NRL level. But we've got two really successful coaches from the New South Wales Rugby League or Country Rugby League in two separate regions. So good perspective tonight as well. But let's introduce them or get them to introduce themselves and we'll get on our way. Matty?
Hey guys, thanks for having me, Stu. Matt Lantry, head coach of the Maitland Pickers, the Newcastle Rugby League competition.
And Ronnie Gordon. I'm the head coach of South Grafton Rebels up in Group 2.
So we'll start with you, Matty. How do you see the current season, brother, from your perspective? Obviously, only lost one game, but had a couple of close ones this year, which I think a lot of people sort of started to get a little bit, confidence, I reckon, out of a couple of close games and the losses took this year, because in previous years you've been pretty dominant, brother.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been successful so far. Obviously, we're in a grand final. We had 5 players, I think it was, picked in the country side. We had 6 in the Newcastle Rebels side. So that, as a personal achievement for those boys is fantastic. They've been part of our system for a long time and rewarded, with those opportunities, and probably could have a few others too, mate, to be honest. It's just the fact that, there's some guys there that, are ready to move on with that next phase of their life and didn't want that commitment of rep footy on top of work and family and club duties. So, mate, we have, every week, for the last 3 years, I think it's fair to say that we've been sort of the dominant club of the Newcastle Rugby League, and we're the hunted, mate. Every week, every team comes up and they roll their sleeves up and challenge us and really put us, to the test. There's no easy games for us at Maitland. Whether, it's Curry Lakes West through to Cessnock South, they're all 80-minute contests for majority of the time, or at least a good 60-minute contest where the scoreline's close. And we might get away from some opposition sides at the back end of each game, but every team turns up and plays, and that's not the same for other teams each and every week. There are easier contests for certain teams, and it's certainly not the case for us. So I'm really proud of how our guys, have handled that every week. They turn up and they know what's coming, and they, put their best foot forward. I don't think we're anywhere near our best or where we've been previously in the last 12 months. We're still searching for that performance. I was sort of hopeful that it might have come on the weekend against South, but we're a bit off the pace and, struggle to get into any sort of rhythm. So no better day to do it than in 2 weeks' time, mate, on grand final days, find your best performance that you've been searching for.
Yeah, for sure. And Ron, from your perspective, brother, what sort of grade, I guess, you give your team based on how the season's panned out for you as well? Because I'm looking at the comp, it's pretty close comp. You fellas finished top, so you've both got something in common. You're both minor premiers as well, with Maitland and South Grafton. You finished top, but you also took 4 losses and a couple of narrow wins, brother. Does that mean the comp is just wide open up that way?
Yeah, it was real tight this year, brother. We had Coffs Harbour, they were on top of the ladder for most of the year, and they got put out in the first round of the semis. We only wrapped up the minor premiership in that last game. We were lucky enough to come up against the team that didn't win a game all year, coached by Clint Greenshields, the Sawtell Panthers. We got a pretty comfortable win there at the end, but all year, it was, you had to turn up. And being the current, premiers from last season, like, everyone turned up against us week in, week out. They knew we'd turn up, so they'd turn up. So it was a tough season, really tight season.
Yeah. Obviously, Matty, dominance we talked a little bit about, but you got a lot of big name players at Maitland who know what it takes to get up when the lights are on. The big game players. Do you ever feel that the boys get complacent at stages, Matt? And how do you handle that? Because when you're dominant and you're at the top for so long, Unfortunately, people can tend to get bored with that as well. As much as everyone wants to play and win competitions, when you're so dominant for so long, how do you challenge yourself week in, week out?
It's a good question. But I don't see complacency in our group at all, mate. We've got some really high standards and we set ourselves some really high values. And part of our DNA or our culture is everyone needs to buy into those standards and those values. And they're not just driven by the coaching staff or the head coach. They are driven by our playing group. And, everyone goes through that mid-year sort of, I wouldn't say form slump, but where it becomes a little tougher. It's the middle of winter. It's cold on a Tuesday and Thursday night. It's hard to get up and play at 3:00 on a Saturday arvo on a wet, cold Saturday June weekend. So they're the challenges that you face, and it is more a mental challenge, but it's not complacency. Our training attendance is, I feel, second to none. Everyone's accountable for where they are. There's no one that doesn't just not turn up to training because they don't feel like it. We always put a few values ahead of footy, and that's work and family. But then footy needs to be that third priority above, most other things. And I'm really proud of our playing group on the standards that they do set and how they buy in. And I said, I haven't seen complacency. I've seen, performances below standard, but there's other reasoning around that as opposed to them not respecting the opposition. So it's not something we've got to manage or we even talk about, mate. As I said, it's more around just what's in our DNA and what the players expect of each other in regards to performance and accountability every week.
How do you tap into that, Matty? Like when you do have your little bit of a slump or whatever as well, if it's not complacency, how do you manage the conversations with the players, especially when they're senior players, and you're obviously at a club where you got a senior group that drive a lot of the standards, like you mentioned. How do you get around, if it's not complacency and it's not a little bit of a slump, that there are other things that are the factors behind it? Yeah. How do you get that? How do you draw that out of the group? Like, do you sit down and have meetings as a group? Do you tap blokes on the shoulder? Do you get them in, like in their little sections, right edges, or how do you manage them, brother?
There's some individual conversations without a doubt, but I actually don't address it. We do a pre-season that's probably harder than the other 10 clubs in the Newcastle Rugby League. So we train, at a very, very high standard through our pre-season, and that sets up our start. It's why we always generally get off to a fast start in the season, because when you do, you can afford to have that mid-season sort of lapse in attention to detail or energy driven in the right areas for performance. So, I don't sort of go too hard at the lads. You obviously got to be aware of it, and it's something you do, have some conversations about with individuals. But, I think through that mid-season, it's hard balancing work life, family life, and then the expectation of being a first-grade player in the Newcastle competition. As long as it's obviously not affecting the win-loss column and what you're doing there doesn't become a habit, and that your team's still got some gears to go. I think, mate, for us, again, it's having the senior lads around that know exactly what it is and, getting through that period and coming out the other side of it, because, we had a bye and then we went into a weekend off for the league, and then we had 3 weeks left of our competition. And it was in that second week of the weekend off that the switch was flicked internally amongst our playing group. We had the most intense defensive drill I've done in the last 4 years with the boys, where they really ripped into each other, and our new finals is just around the corner and we're ready to go,
And Ron, in contrast to that, brother, like we talked about the dominance with Matt and a lot of the older players, and I don't know, Matt, there's a rumour too that like you guys generally country rugby league, they sign them year to year, but is it true that you sign them on 2 and 3 year deals as well, that the boys commit that far out?
Yeah, we do, mate. I'm a big believer. If you want sustained long-term success, it's about keeping your crew together. And two, it allows you to plan long-term rather than just year to year for us. That's a key for us. And it's not a compulsory thing. Someone wants to sign a 1 year deal. We've got, a handful of players on 1 year deals, but when Lammy come here, I think he signed to the end of 2024. Because you could see the direction that we wanted to head in. Chatty O'Donnell signed a 3-year deal. Jimmy Taylor signed a 3-year deal. So, we've just got guys that have recently re-signed for a 2-year period, mate, through the end of 2025. And it's trying to minimise how many guys are off contract at the same time, so you're not having to have – it's not just 20 meetings with your top 20 players. The head coach has got the responsibility to sign the roster, so it's working down to player number 50, so to speak. So, I think when you get those senior guys locked away, as I said, it allows you to plan long term. It allows you to think a little bit about where your juniors sit and when they're going to come through. But I just find it easier on a planning phase, but also, mate, to build sustained long-term success. There's no secret, I think, that you can or you need to have your group together for a long period of time.
Yeah. And Ron, sorry.
It allows you to build a culture too, because, mate, if you've got that high turnover player all the time, you're consistently having to go back and repeat the same message, where it doesn't give you an opportunity to evolve your culture. You might develop a strong culture with a really good group over 12 months, but then in losing a big portion of your playing group and then replacing them, you've got to start again every year. So it doesn't actually allow you to build, I think, a culture over a long period, which then becomes your actual DNA as a club.
Yeah. And Ron, we're talking about obviously Matty with the dominance, but for you, brother, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you got a lot of players that aren't necessarily big names, but they come out and they produced. Last year, Nokarara off, which was coached by Sammy Burgess, and they were dominant all year, and then you come out and beat them on grand final day. Where does the belief come from, and how have you built that belief in the squad, brother?
Yeah, it kind of happened a couple of years ago, Stu, when I was still back doing the juniors. I obviously had to sit in first grade a few years back and had a bit of success, but then I wanted to go back to the juniors because I felt like we were losing a lot of our good footballers, and I wanted to be a part of, making sure that we could retain a lot of those boys. So during that period, trying to get these boys up to speed to play at a first grade level, we were losing a lot of players, and COVID hit, and that sort of threw a massive spinner in the works. A lot of people didn't, come back from that, particularly the older players. So I guess I did go back into head coach with the idea that I really wanted to, bring the average age down of our team, because we were running on a lot of old legs. And like I said, COVID really affected a lot of those players. Some of them went, nearly 2 years without playing high competitive football. So by the time that 2 years was over and done with, we were sort of, we were struggling, and numbers up this way, like with rugby league and quality footballers, it's pretty minimal. So I guess when I had that plan in place, it was about, like Matty just mentioned, rebuilding the culture, and making sure that first grade was the pinnacle of the club again, because there for a while it felt like it wasn't. And since then, getting our juniors coming through, a lot of the boys that I coached from under 13s right through into first grade now. Like, I think there was 11 of the boys last year that were, that I'd coached in the juniors that were in that premiership team last year. The unfortunate thing was, but a lot of them boys, they were just straight out of high school, and some of them off the university, some of them off doing other things. So this year was really another rebuilding year, because we had a high turnover and only kept 5 players from last year's premiership side. But I was fortunate enough, that I'd done enough work with the under 18s that were there the year before and the year before that we managed to bring them through. So at the moment, I think I've got 3 boys in the team that are 18-year-old, and they just believe in what we're doing, and some of the older boys are making sure that they're learning to play first grade football, because it's not just about their ability, it's about that mental thing, it's the toughness, it's about being gritty and those sorts of things. So these young fellas are learning that with the likes of some of our older boys like Stumpy Stevens and Huey Stanley, these boys that have played in these systems. So they're learning it, mate. There were a few times throughout the season where I questioned myself and the decisions I made, a couple of years ago with the rebuild. But it wasn't the doubt in the boys. It was just like, it was more, I guess, the doubt in myself, because I felt like maybe I tried to bite off more than I could chew, but things worked out, and the senior players really stepped up and really helped me, in trying to achieve what I've been trying to do. So, minor premiership locked up, and looking forward to this Sunday, brother.
The major, eh? So talk to us a little bit about that. We'll jump straight into that, Ron, while we've got you. But Woolgoolga, Whoopi, you've had a couple of close ones this year, eh? Is it 1-1?
1-1, brother. Yeah. So they're heavily backed by Wyong Roos. I think they're like a feeder club for Wyong Roos. So they're another club. They're well looked after. They recruit a lot of players. They got blokes that were part of those Clayton's Cup teams from Gundagai, and they got blokes from Queensland and stuff. So yeah, they're really recruited heavy. They're a massive side. Eh? They look really out of place up here in the bush footy. They're huge.
And Ron, like Matty talked about doing a lot of work in the off season and smashing them with pre-season. What's your philosophy? Because a lot of coaches will give it to them in the pre-season, but sort of taper off so they don't sort of lose their legs early on. Matt talked about trying to get a head start on the competition and then face the lull in the middle of the season and then build back up into the semis. How do you build your season, brother?
Yeah, so over the last 2 seasons, I really cut our pre-season short. I wasn't starting in December like we would in previous years. I felt like people were getting a little bit sort of bored with football come those colder months. You start getting bashed around, and you've done all this training for months, and so I really shortened pre-season up. But I added an extra day in, so we weren't just coming back doing the 2 days when we got back in February. We were getting into it 3 days a week. But it was probably the best pre-season we've had at the club for a long time. Last year we couldn't even do a pre-season. We were training on concrete because we had so much flood up this way. It was unbelievable, mate. We were training at the racetrack on the asphalt, for majority of the pre-season. And then this year we got stuck right into it. It was a really good pre-season, and we did boot camps and all the rest of it, and people really bought into it. We had a plan for the 10 weeks to go solid 3 days a week, and get knuckled down so that we were hitting the ground running.
Yeah, nice. Matt, talk to us a little bit about how you manage the loads of the older fellas. You obviously got a few veterans there as well that have been around, won a lot of competitions as well, but been around a little while. Do you tell them or do they tell you?
Better be careful who we put in the veteran category, mate. They might shoot me. Mate, they tell me. I think, no one likes to, pull out a pre-season or pull out of sessions. It's just something that, is built within the guys that we've got. They actually enjoy that element of training, so to speak. Yeah, it's tough, but, it's a physical health benefit too for those guys looking after themselves. So, we're pretty fortunate in that sense. There's a couple of times, I've had to tap some guys on the shoulder to say, hey, you need to stop, you're displaying this, or we know you're a bit sore, you need to be smart about what we do. So, yeah, it's generally the trust between the two, mate. We know they're not cutting a corner, but if they need to play the smart card, it's always on offer for them.
Yeah, awesome. What about you, Ron?
Sorry, Stu, what was that? You got a little bit fuzzy in that last one, brother.
Sorry, brother. Yeah, no, talking a little bit about the older players, setting the standards. You talked about a lot of the younger fellas that you've got there. How do you manage the load of the older players without the younger fellas thinking you give them favoritism to the veterans as well?
Yeah. No, that I guess it's not with me. I don't sort of see it as favoritism. Look, I'll give them a longer leash. I feel like they've earned that right over time. But in saying that, they know where I stand as far as towing the line as well. Like the boys don't cut corners at training. But when it comes to little things, I have different expectations of some of my older boys as I do the younger boys coming through. And some people see it as a double standard. I don't think it is. I think that they sort of pay dividends, with what they're helping me with as well. So, yeah.
Ron, the season, we talked about the season and the competition up there. It's a lot closer than probably previous years, or I don't know. Has it always been like that? Like, Because is there a lot more structure? Like you've been down here, you've lived down here, you've seen a lot of footy down here. It's pretty structured, but you got blokes that have been dabbling in, New South Wales, Queensland Cup, so they're all, love gym and big bodies and strong and fit. What's it like up there, brother, with the players up there? Obviously, haven't got as much access to a lot of the gyms and sports science and different things. Do you have a lot of players come back from big competitions as well that just get homesick?
Yeah, we've had a couple. Like we had GI that come back to the comp last year, back to play with his hometown of Maxwell. He didn't play a real lot of games, but our players like Danny Wicks and Clint Greenshields and those sort of blokes, they all come back into this competition. Most of our players from around this area, they'll go up into the Gold Coast comp and come back down that way. We've had some blokes. I think there's a bloke. It might even be the bloke from Maddie's team. Is it Brock Lamb? Is that the bloke? He was up this way. He was playing with Coffs Commonsay at one part, and then he ended up going down south. So every now and then you'll get these, these big name players sort of come in and out of the competition. But as far as the comp this year, mate, look, I don't feel as although it was close, I don't feel like the competition was as strong this year. Which is disappointing. And that comes off the back. Last year we had Sammy Burgess, who created a lot of interest in the group, and he had people like Wayne Bennett that will come along to games and stuff like that. And then this year that team that we beat in the grand final, that same coach, they're not even in the competition this year. So it's pretty disappointing, mate. But it's the competition was close, but it's just not as high quality as it has been in previous years.
Matty, we talked a little bit off the top about like you guys and the coaching careers and the successes of that as well, both you and Ron. And I've talked to both of you a little bit about taking it to the next step or pursuing higher standards or higher achievements in terms of your coaching as well. Has anyone sort of knocked on the door and try to get you out of Maitland and get you into a system, or what's happening there? Because there's been rumours, like I mentioned, off air, that you might not be around next year. What's going on?
You know better than anyone, Skid. Don't believe rumours, for starters. And when you hear one, you generally ask the person, is it true? And you get an honest answer. And I gave you an honest answer. No, look, mate, I'm committed to Maitland long term, and that won't change. I want to obviously engage and enjoy as much success as I can with my current playing group, but I see it as a responsibility too that, in a sense, I'm as part of the process of building this success. And, we've got some guys over the course of the next 12 months, 2 years that'll retire, and I don't want it to then just fizzle away, mate, where it was just a good period for Maitland and we don't set them up for the future. So I'd like to think, mate, I'll be here for a few more years yet and see that transition of the new player in particular, our juniors coming through. That's a key focal point for us that, we've been hammering on about is, obviously bringing our kids through and giving them an opportunity. And that's not sacrificing success either. It's about the balance of it all and making sure they got the right environment to improve and come through. If it was to go and pursue something else, I feel like the Queensland Cup's probably that next step, mate. I don't see the New South Wales Cup pathway as much of an opportunity, mate. I think it's well documented. If you haven't played at an NRL level, you're not going to get a coaching gig. I think clubs just chew junior coaches up and spit them out at a Matson ball level, and young coaches that are aspirational, just continually watch ex-NRL players have deals done within their contract post-retirement, that there's a coaching gig for them. And, these guys aren't doing any sort of, junior development-based related education around being a coach. And I think that's why we see so many coaches fail. I think Phil Gould's spoken openly on it, a number of times, and he makes some really valid points. So, for that, mate, I would sort of see, heading north might be an option in years to come, mate. I dabbled a little bit around having a chat with North Devils and Wynnum Manly 12 months ago. And that's just sort of to keep myself relevant, but see what opportunities are genuinely out there. And those conversations were really promising, but it's all about timing, mate, particularly the young family. And, that may or may not happen down the track. It's I'd love it too, but it's not anything that's driving me, mate, to any particular point at this stage.
And just before we go to Ron on that, Matty, I want people to understand too that Maitland, like early 2000s, we were the whipping boys at Maitland. And then, players like PJ Ellis and Jolie Osborne and Jade Porter and all them went to the club and they won a couple of premierships. But since they left, it's been a bit of a lull again. So you've come back there, you've created a lot of interest within the area. You got first grade and reserve grade in the grand final and the 19s in the prelim this week as well. So you've done some really good things there for the region, mate, where everyone now want to go and play. If they're not playing NRL, they want to play first grade at Maitland. A lot of the Maitland juniors as well, which is big for you as well, I know.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I think I often, when I talk to young kids, and we started a Pathways Academy program for 80-odd kids aged between 15 and 16, both boys and girls. Use the example to those kids is when I come through the junior system here, we played for Maitland in the 16s and 17s, but there was never that connection with the senior club. There was, because they were a bit of the whipping boys, mate, and they struggled to win games. I probably I knew they existed, but it never was my intention to go and watch them or, think about what my career looked like. And obviously, too, as a young guy, you want to go on and play in the NRL, and that's the only thing that matters at that time. But I don't want young kids in Maitland coming through and not aspiring to play for the Pickers, if they don't go on and pursue NRL or they go and play Flegg or Flegg or New South Wales Cup somewhere, and it doesn't transpire into becoming an NRL player, they can come back and play for the Pickers. We want the guys locally to be the club of choice for them, and I don't want them to see the Pickers in a position where, or kids be in a position where, I'm not going to the Pickers because they don't win or they don't look after their juniors or whatever it might be. So we've worked really hard in that space, mate. And, I think, we've made some really good traction in our local community. When kids come to play for Maitland, they know they're going to be looked after. They know they're going to come into a good environment that is competitive from 19s through to first grade. It's about, enjoying your footy and whatever else, but at the end of the day, we're there to win too, and winning helps that enjoyment factor, and it's about the environment you create for that to happen, mate. And I'm looking forward to the next couple of years and hopefully some more success, but also when the opportunity arises that we've got a pathway or a plethora of kids coming through a pathway that's really inviting both on the male and female space. I think that's important as well.
Yeah. And you, Ron, obviously talked a little bit about aspirations as a coach in the past. You must be happy with what you've been doing and what you've been able to do up there with South Grafton. When do you feel like the time might be right for you as well? Your young fellas up in Queensland there, there's a lot of good competitions up there, like you mentioned, around the Gold Coast and Brizzy. Have you ever thought about it, brother, dabbling in it?
Yeah, I have thought about it, Skew. I think, Matty sort of hit the nail on the head, but mate, unless you're a former NRL player, you're a long way down, and it just, you sort of feel defeated before you even, I guess, go out on that journey to try and crack it somewhere. But for me, I'm enjoying doing what I'm doing, mate, at South Grafton. Getting the club, instilling a lot of pride back into the community. Before 2015, we hadn't won a premiership for 45 years. So we've made a lot of inroads over the last few years, and it's starting to trickle down. We're getting some good kids that are getting looked at now, and I just want to continue on that journey for a little bit, and I guess wish my boys all the best in their journeys with sport as well up on the Gold Coast.
What toughest challenge as a coach, Ron?
Toughest challenge?
Yeah.
Cutting players is the worst, man. Hey, that's the worst part about coaching, I reckon. That never gets easy, eh?
Yeah.
It's the worst part of it.
What about for you, Matty?
Yeah, it's a fair point, Ron. It does. It's a challenge, mate. Like we had an 18-man squad going into the major semi, and one bloke's got to miss out. It's a tough conversation. I think on that as well, within our 17-man squad, we carried an outside back on the bench, and he didn't get on the weekend. And that's a tough call to make, but it's team first, and, it's about the result on the weekend. You've only got 8 interchanges, and it's sort of like you can run guys on and off. And outside of that, I think coaching in itself is challenging. It's time consuming, if you're going to do it properly, I feel, for me, I feel my responsibilities as a coach is that it's more than just beyond coaching the first grade team or being a club coach. I sit right alongside our president in John Gorman, secretary is my old girl, they need support as well. And I feel like if they understand the direction we want to go in as a club, it helps us off field, because then they buy into the belief and the direction, and we're all rowing the boat in the same way. If we're not, and the committee wants to go in one direction, and the coaches want to go into another, it becomes, enormously challenging. So, I work really hard and consistently across the course of the year from, February when we really officially kick off through to September, hand in hand with the committee, and make sure we're all on the same page and we're all heading in the right direction. So it's probably the time that it takes up, mate, is probably the biggest challenge.
And Ron, you've always got good relationships with your players, but because they know you're firm and fair too. But in terms of managing a lot of the stuff that Matty talked about, you've done a lot of work in mental health space. Do you feel that that's helped you as a coach, brother?
Massively, brother. Yeah. My professional career has definitely helped me with my success on, with the coaching. But not just that, like I worked with juvenile justice for 8 years, managing really complex kids out there, and a high percentage of those kids, unfortunately, are Indigenous kids, which is what I deal with at my football club. I've got a high percentage of Aboriginal players at my football club. So I guess that 8-year career there, now I work in the school, working with Clontarf, working with Aboriginal boys, that it all helps my coaching massively.
Got a couple of questions from the feed here. Clarkey wants to know, Ron, what's the talk? You off up the coast to coach or what? Nah, I think you come in late on that.
Yeah.
Matty, there's a coach here. There's a question here from one of the parents of a young lady who plays footy around the Woodbury area, and she wants to know, with the Pickers Pathways program, are you making a girls team out of that when they get old enough? Who went to the program, the young ones?
Yeah, look, we'd love for our Pathways program to be able to feed into teams. So we're a little bit frustrated, I guess, in a sense that we can't have district teams below the age of 19. So schoolboys finishes at 17. With our under 17s at the moment, we've got to play 2 teams, a black and a white team, and there's boundaries within those teams based on where you live. I'm a big believer in building the foundations first and growing from bottom up, not top down. That way you'd like to think going to be sustainable, because you'll have that influx of player consistently coming into your grade system. So look, it is within our long-term plan, and when we talk long-term, within the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years, to have a 17s girls team. We'd love to see Newcastle Rugby League really push to have a 19s women's competition under the district banner, and then we'd love to see a women's tackle competition team or competition that sits under the district clubs but alongside the Denton Cup in first grade here. I feel like we're, as a game, doing the women's competition a disservice by not having another elite level or tier of competition for them at a senior level. We've got the NRLW, we've got Tasha Gale, we've got Harvey Norman Women's Premiership, and then we go back to the A grade, sort of in that lower Hunter competition. There's too big a gap there, and if we want to, build a product and provide girls locally in Newcastle the right pathway for them to have an opportunity to play Harvey Norman and then play NRL, I think we need a district competition that sits, like I said, alongside the Denton Cup. And through that, we could then have Maitland 17s, Maitland 19s, that fed that first grade women's competition. I think it's the right pathway and we're heading in the right direction. So that is our long-term goal, without a doubt. We'd love to have a grade side next year and an under 17s picker side, and those conversations then obviously need to be had in the off season with New South Wales Rugby League.
Ron, anything to add there? And I think you guys have got a ladies league tag up there, but have you got women's tackle, brother? Where's
they're
the
up in
Women's
the,
Rugby League up there?
yeah, they're up in the NRRL. So they had like a really small sort of competition this year, which I think Northern United took it out. So yeah, it's sort of just getting underway up this way, brother. It's league tag sort of been dominant up here, but I feel as though that league tag is going to dissolve soon, and the women's tackle will sort of fill that void. So I hope it does. I think it sort of makes more sense to have that a part of, you know, the fixtures for our Sunday football, really.
Couple of questions left before we let you go. But the toughest challenge. What about the opposite, Ron? I'll get you to go first on this one. But what's the most rewarding thing as a coach?
I guess when you see the buy-in from everybody, and you see the change, not just at the football club but in the community, you know, that to me that's massive. Like South Grafton's a pretty tight-knit community. We're the blue collar people. We're the you know, the rough side of town, I suppose you'd call us. And we've got a pretty heavy rivalry with Grafton Ghosts over town. So yeah, I think seeing the change in the community when we're successful at, you know, on the football field, and people are buying in, people are coming and, you know, watching us play football, and they're enjoying it. And yeah, it's a great feeling. That's the upside for me.
Yeah. Matty?
Yeah, I agree with Ron, mate. I think the buy-in from the community is one of the most pleasing aspects, and that's your crowd through the gate on a Saturday at 3 o'clock at Maitland Sports Ground. We by far have, you know, the best supporters and the biggest numbers that attend our home games out of all clubs. And then it's the pathway kids, you know, to see 80 kids turn up, you know, on a Sunday morning with our grade staff, coaches, to take part in our academy. And it was our first year, and we learned so much from it. It'll grow, you know, considerably. And we don't pick on ability. It was club nominated. How we can do that better, we're into some discussions now. But, you know, for us, seeing those kids, you know, wear a Pickers training shirt and feel like they're part of the Pickers, and it just shows the health of, you know, Maitland Rugby League, and our brand, you know, has a real strong appeal within the local community. I think that's what I'm most proud of over the last 4 years. You know, the premierships are nice. Success you'll never want to sacrifice, but I feel like collectively everyone's put the effort into turning Maitland into a place that, you know, their supporters are proud to follow and their kids are proud to become a part of.
Yeah, awesome. We got shout out here, Ron. We got your wife's on. She's looking for a shout out. She said, "Hello, Ronald," and she wants a shout out. What about turning point in the season? What do you reckon the turning point is? Matty, we'll start with you, because like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people actually thought this was the year that they could get you, and you're first in there. So what was the turning point for you? You had a couple of close ones.
Yeah, we did. You know, and we're still gettable, mate. Everyone is, you know, and we don't think any further ahead of, you know, turning up and making sure we try and deliver on our standards that we set ourselves. So, you know, I think the turning point was, I think I alluded to before, we had a weekend off, and then we come back, and it was then a scheduled weekend off. So it was a 2-week break, and no one ever really wants a fortnight off, you know, towards the back end of the competition leading in finals. It's just the way it was drawn, and it is what it is. But I guess it's how you manage that too. So, you know, for our rep guys and things like that, I thought that break was invaluable, but it gave our coaching group an opportunity to go away and really reevaluate where we're at. And we use the 3 R's, you know, reset, refocus, and refresh, and physically and mentally. And we felt giving the boys a week off, and then having that week where we could just concentrate on our own backyard and get a few things right. And like I said, when we come back against the Bay in round 16 with 3 weeks left outside of finals, and still had to win 2 of our last 3 to secure the minor premiership, and one of those was against Souths. Yeah, I knew the switch had been flicked then. So I feel like what I thought was a negative in the 2 weeks off actually really turned into a positive.
Ron, same thing.
Yeah, the local derby, mate, the second local derby against Grafton over in Grafton. I think 2008 was the last time we'd actually beat them over there, you know, and that's, you know, when we've had success and won premierships here, we always struggle to beat our local arch rivals over there on home soil. So, yeah, I think we ended up getting them 34-0 or something it was, and it was a big turning point because I think the boys just found belief in that. It was a bit of a bashathon. The boys belted into each other for the full 80 minutes, but our boys really come away from that strong. And then since then they just sort of, like I said, they've had this belief that if they turn up, then they can beat anybody.
Ron, Whoopee on the weekend, obviously we already talked about 1-1. That's the major to get straight in. Obviously everyone wants to get straight in, manage injuries, all those sorts of things. On the flip side, a lot of people that feel like they get the second bite, have that momentum as well moving in. Now, you obviously want to win on the weekend and go straight in, be the first one in. What do you reckon you got to do differently, to find that edge that you? It's been a 2-point and a 6-point ball game, both games. So, what do you reckon you got to do to find the edge, brother?
We just got to complete. The last time we played them, our second half was poor. We turned over too much pill. We didn't respect it enough. The boys aimed up defensively. They were really good, but we just got to respect that pill a little bit more this time. And I think that goes a long way to us to beating any of the teams in this competition, really.
Matty, you're already in there, so you already got what Ron wants this weekend, obviously. But there's 2 other teams. The question is there a preference, or to be the champs, you got to knock them all off anyway?
Yeah, 100%, mate. I think the 3 teams that are left, they've been the best 3 teams all year, and both have different strengths, so to speak. You look at Musgrove, Clune, Seeker, Reed Hugo, Josh Charles, Hanetti Tua, their back 5 is the biggest in the comp, and they're absolutely hard to handle. If you don't kick well, they can annihilate you with field position and really get their sets off to a good start. And then, Barber, Apthorpe and co come on the back of it. And then you look at South, their strength is Simpson, Welsh, Nuasala. They're packed through the middle, Pettit, Piper off the bench. They are massive bodies and probably struggled to handle that a little bit on the weekend, looking back on some reflection. And, we sort of need to do some things to improve that area of our game leading into the next fortnight. So, mate, teams with different strengths, but very, very good footy teams. And either one, whoever it will be, it'll be a tough, tight contest. I think Newcastle Rugby League will get a very close grand final this year. And, mate, both coaches sort of sitting on the edge of their seat for the 80 minutes.
What is there a player, Ron, that you've been surprised by in your unit this year? Someone who's sort of been your most improved, that really surprised the group, but gone to another level from previous years, Ron?
Oh, not so much, mate. We've got a young bloke that just come back from. He was going to school up at Ipswich. He's a part of that team that won that national titles last year. Young Nick Torrens. I think he was contracted with Souths, and then he picked up an injury, and they just sort of pushed him to the side a bit, and he come back, and he's only 18-year-old. Come back, and he's been the best forward in this competition by country mile. I think he's looking at going down to Newcastle or Sydney next season, but he's quality, mate. Like, he's one of the toughest footballers I've ever seen in my life.
Matty, he's got to be good, guys.
Sorry, mate.
Sorry. Have you got like a player that's really surprised you? But then on the flip side, you guys are already in there. Who's got to be good for you to win another premiership, mate?
First party question, mate, would be, I was just thinking about it while Ron was having a chat there, and there's a young guy that's come out of Denman, fullback Bailey Taylor, was exceptional, had some opportunity through the course of the year, and he's been playing the reserve grade grand final, but I think he's got a massive future for us in first grade over the coming years. He reminds me a bit of James Bradley when he arrived here from Singleton. He just never looked back once he got into the environment. But the other one is probably, it's going to probably sound a little bit silly, but Brock Laird, more for how he's matured as a person and what he's delivered for us more off the field with his maturity around leadership and taking young blokes under his wing. Like, he won't meet a better bloke than Brock, and the way he's just, absorbed himself within our club and like I said, the leadership that he's shown, more so off the field than on the field, it's been exceptional. And he's a huge figure in our footy team. What was your second question there? Sorry, mate.
Who's got to be big for you to get another premiership?
Everyone's got to do their job. It's hard to probably single anyone out, but I guess, looking at the weekend, we put ourselves under a little bit of pressure because our middle third probably didn't handle things as well as what we would have or were accustomed to. So I think there's a fair amount of accountability that sits on those lads' shoulders, and they wouldn't mind me saying it. I think they thrive on the challenge week to week, but, Anderson, Butterfield, Taylor, as our three sort of middles, they play a massive role in how we play as a footy team. They're going to play a platform, mate, and defend well for us. It's not the most complicated position on the field, but it's certainly one of the toughest, both mentally and physically. And I think they'll have a fair say in regards to how we go in a fortnight.
What about you, Ron? Are there any players that you single out as players that everyone feeds off, like energy-wise? If they go well, everyone sort of lifts for the squad.
Yeah, our forward pack have been awesome this year. Like they've stepped up every single game. I don't think between those five players, I don't think they've had a bad game. So if they show up with that same intensity throughout these finals, will be hard to beat. But also, our captain, our fullback, Kieran Johnson, he's a good footballer, man. He's again just showed so much maturity this year, particularly off the field. He's making sure that all the boys are accountable for what they're doing on and off the field. This is a guy that I coached for years, and I heard him speak about 3 words. I reckon in about 3 or 4 years that I even knew the kid before that, and then. Now, he just speaks comfortably and confidently in front of people, and he pulls the boys up, and he's really good. So if he has a big final series, we're going to be hard to beat.
And last question for you both, how did you get into coaching, and what advice could you give young aspiring coaches as well? Because you fellas still only young in yourselves, and you've had a fair bit of success. So. Where did the interest come from? Who did you look up to? And what advice have you got for the young ones coming through, aspiring to be coaches just like yourselves?
I guess for me, mate, I always had an aspiration to coach for whatever reason. I played, I think it was 12 months with West in 05. I had 12 months with Maitland where I did a little bit of assistant coaching and tried to manage playing. I didn't play very well at the back end of my career, so I thought, mate, coaching to stay involved in the game was probably the best way to go. Mate, and then, Greta Brankston took a risk. They didn't know me. And I didn't really know myself as a coach. I just thought it was something I wanted to pursue, and I felt trying to have a crack at a decent level, by coaching men and getting myself out of my comfort zone was the way to go. I tried to captain coach, and it didn't work well at all. I didn't really enjoy managing both sides, and I think being inexperienced, I sort of put a bit of pressure on myself, from a coaching perspective. So, to move straight into a coaching role, going right out, well, I'm going to pursue coaching, stop playing at the age of, I think, 23 or 24, and started coaching there with Greta Brankston 08, 9, 10, or 7, 8, 9, 10, but 8, 9, and 10 as a head coach, and had some success. And after 4 years, moved into the Knights junior system, and then probably it was Rick Stone that showed some belief, in me a little bit, and goes, "Mate, I'll give you a crack if you're keen." And 2013, I was an assistant coach to him in the New South Wales Cup, which is where I learned, a whole host of things. But I felt like I wanted to be a head coach rather than assistant coach. So took a risk, got out of the Knights system as a coach, and went and coached Charlestown in the district comp. And then, Stoney gets appointed to the head coach role in 15. And, I get an opportunity to coach the New South Wales Cup in 2015, where we go on and win the competition. And, it transitioned from there, really. It's sort of been, an interesting roller coaster ride to be on. You're 15, 16 coaching, and then Nathan Brown comes in and changes some things, as you're entitled to do as a new head coach at an NRL club. And, I had to go and find something else, and wasn't overly keen to uproot family and whatnot. So I, just coached in the local comp for the last 7 odd years. And I think that's sort of how I transitioned into coaching. I had some wonderful mentors, Warren Smiles, Sparrow Clifton, Rick Stone himself, have been probably three real close guys. I enjoyed working with Michael Hagan in 2015, and sort of a mentor-related sort of situation with the New South Wales Cup as well. So, it's been enjoyable, right? I think you experience a number of emotions, mate, and I don't know, whether it's marbles or it's a game of footy, you put your best foot forward, and you give everything you've got, and try hardest to try and improve yourself as a person, but also the people around you. That's a challenge I like, is just making sure that other people are enjoying themselves as well, and they're improving, and you can see that confidence, reflecting themselves as people and how they hold themselves in the community.
Ron?
Yeah, for me, Stu, I think I mentioned it on your podcast a while back, but I sort of fell into it by accident. Went to footy training with my young fella one time, and this lady was coaching him, and she obviously didn't know what she was doing, poor girl. So, and rather than criticise, I thought, I better go over and chuck my hat in the ring. So I went over and I said, "Do you mind if I step in?" And she almost pegged the whistle at me. She was so happy to give the boys over. And then that was back in 2012. Under 10s was my first coaching gig, and then just from there I had a bit of success from there. Basically, from every year from there, I sort of made a grand final. So 2014, I think, was the first senior one with the under 18s, the first one in the club's history. 2016 was my first premiership with A grade, and then 2017 another grand final, and then last year, obviously, I stepped back obviously for a little bit, and then last year went back up to first grade and got another title. So I just, like I said, I just fell in it by accident. I don't take myself too serious. I just enjoy football. I love footy, and like I said earlier, I love the influence it can have on a community. And that's the thing that made me fall in love with it, and that's why I continue to do it.
Yeah, and one bit of advice before you leave, one each. Advice for young aspiring coaches and even young footballers, I guess, wanting to make it as well. You guys have been around good people, good systems. You've seen good players come and go that didn't make it. What advice have you got for them young ones just wanting to make it in any career in the footy?
You go first on that one, Rob.
Yeah. Mate, I actually heard a really good quote from a top AFL coach, and it's something that sort of stuck with me. And I think the quote sort of went, they don't care what you know, they want to know that you care. And that's the big thing, is people want to know that you care about them. They don't care what you know about the game and all the rest of it. They want to know that you care about them and who they are and all the rest of it. So if you're going to get into it, make sure that you care about the people, and they're not just footballers, they're people. So make sure that you're not just shaping them on the football field, but shaping them as people. That's real important.
How do I follow that? Is outstanding. I think that's a massive point. You do need to care about them as people, particularly in our environments, because they're not full-time athletes. They've got so many other factors within their life that you need to take into account. And if they're not at their best on a Tuesday or Thursday, or they're not at their best on a Saturday afternoon at 3:00, then there might be some reasons surrounding it. Are there family issues? Are there issues related at work? You got to balance shift workers in this competition. Poor blokes, leaving training to go to work or coming into training off the back of no sleep. There's so many factors that do need to be considered by the coach. That's for sure. Even little things such as mental health. It's huge. We're a club that we don't just want to talk about that space. We want to actually put some actions into place to make sure our players have got the right support. And I'm probably shouting out to Dean Noonan here and his company Check 5. Dino was an employee of the Newcastle Knights for a long period of time in the welfare space, and saw an opportunity in the market to go and help people with their mental health. And he's got a program called Check 5 where employees, if a company takes up his offer, actually get an opportunity to check in on a regular basis in regards to 5 areas. And if anything's flagged, they then link them in with the necessary supports, be it if it's a relationship issue, Relationships Australia, or if it's a financial issue through gambling or whatever, it's the Salvo's financial arm that can help. So we've actually linked in with him, and we don't know who it is. We just get the numbers back, but you'd be surprised the number of players that are actually, reaching out and grabbing some support that was never there for them before. And if that's just at our club alone, how many players across the game, Australia wide are affected by some form of mental health? And we've sort of taken that space really seriously. And I think, what Ron said there is spot on, just ensuring that, you walk in with an approach that it's not about you and it's not about how much you know, get to know your players first, build the right relationships, build respect, build credibility, have respect, be prepared to listen. And, you'll go okay as a coach. It's not all about the X's and O's. I used to be that coach. I thought it was about the technical elements. And in 2019, I changed my complete approach. I actually started to think about and understand and learn about what makes players tick. We did a really powerful workshop with Wes where each player had to get up and stand up for 2 minutes and talk about the 3 H's: who was a hero in their life, a hardship that they faced, and what was a highlight in their life. And some of the hardships that guys spoke about, it, grown men standing there in front of each other, pouring all this emotion out with tears and whatnot. It was unbelievably powerful, but the connection within the group grew like you wouldn't believe. And we went on to win that competition with a team that is as close-knit as I've coached. And it come back to relationships and actually something outside of footy that wasn't even relevant, but so important to hang our hat on. So it's an unbelievably important part.
Wow. 2 incredible men who are also coaches and having success because of the reasons you heard tonight, guys. And we thank you for listening and watching, but I want to thank Matty and Ron for your insight as well. And there's no wonder you fellas have been successful and will continue to be successful, no doubt, as coaches and leaders of young men. So I want to thank you guys for coming on and sharing, what it takes for you guys as well to be leaders and be coaches and share a little bit of your journey as well. So I'm sure there's so many people out there who have got so much out of the yarn tonight, and we thank you for giving your time, because it's an hour, and you're coming, like Ron, you're going into a major semi, trying to get into a grand final. So it's just footy for you as well, brother. So, and then Matt, you're already in there, brother. So we appreciate you coming on and giving an hour of your time at this time of the season as well. So, thanks again, brothers.
Anytime, mate, and best luck to Ron on the weekend, eh?
Same to you, Matty. Thanks, Gilly, for having me, brother.
No, I appreciate you for coming on.
No worries, bro.
Cheers, boys.
All right. That's episode 15 of season 2 in the bank. The coaches. If you're around Grafton on the weekend, get out and watch it. It's up there, Ron. Yeah, you got a home game, major semi.
Yeah, McKissick Park, brother. That's where the action is on Sunday.
On Sunday, there you go. And then you can see Matty next weekend in the GF against either South or Cessnock. And that'll be at McDonald Jones Stadium again, Matt.
Yeah, the Sunday this year, mate. The 2nd of September.
Awesome. All right, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks again.
See you, bro.
Yeah, mate.
See you guys.